Call came on a Tuesday, just after 7 in the morning, while I was still in my bathrobe drinking coffee and watching the birds at the feeder my wife Ellen had hung outside the kitchen window 11 years ago. I hadn't taken it down after she passed. I don't think I ever will. My son's name flashed on the screen. I picked up on the second ring because that's what fathers do. We pick up. No matter the time, no matter what we were in the middle of. We pick up. Dad. His voice had that particular tightness to it, the one I'd learned to recognize over 38 years, the voice that meant something was wrong and he needed something, but he wasn't going to lead with the need. He was going to work up to it. Morning, son? Everything okay? A pause. Yeah, mostly. Can I come by this weekend? Bring Adrian? We wanted to talk to you about something. I told him, of course, I'd make chili. I had a feeling I was going to need something warm and familiar nearby when this conversation happened. I want to tell you something about my son before I go any further, because I think it matters. He was a good kid, genuinely good. The kind of boy who brought home stray cats and cried at the end of movies and remembered his grandmother's birthday without being reminded. When he was 9, he broke a neighbor's window with a baseball and walked over there himself, knocked on the door, and told them what he'd done. I watched from across the street, my chest so full of pride I could barely breathe. I raised him alone after Ellen got sick. She fought for 6 years, longer than most of the doctors thought she would, and during that time our son was our anchor. He'd come home from high school, do his homework at the kitchen table, and then sit with her while I made dinner. He'd read to her, sports scores mostly because she pretended to care about baseball just to make him feel like she was listening. He married Adrian 4 years after Ellen died. I liked Adrian well enough at the wedding. She was sharp, put together, had a good sense of humor about herself. What I didn't understand then, standing at the reception with a glass of champagne and my heart quietly aching because Ellen wasn't there to see it, was that Adrian had very clear ideas about how their life was going to look. And those ideas, I would come to learn, had a price tag. They arrived Saturday around noon. My son, I'll call him that throughout because that's what he is to me, that's the word that carries all of it. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. His eyes had the slightly hollowed quality of a man who'd been having the same argument in his head for weeks. Adrian looked fine. She usually did. I made chili. We ate. We talked about the drive down from Raleigh, about the construction on I-85, about my neighbor who'd finally sold his house after 7 months on the market. Normal conversation. The kind that has a layer of static underneath it because everyone at the table knows what the real conversation is, and nobody wants to be the first one to start. My son finally set down his spoon. Dad, he said, we found a house. I waited. In Cary, good school district, close to Adrian's sister, backyard for eventually. He cleared his throat. The thing is, the market's still pretty brutal up there. We've been outbid 3 times already. This one we really love, and our realtor says if we don't move fast, it's gone. I looked at him. I looked at him. I looked at her. She was watching me with the careful, neutral expression of someone who had rehearsed this moment. What are you asking me? I said, though I already knew. We're asking if you'd consider a gift, he said, to help with the down payment. We have about $60,000 saved, but the house is listing at $410,000. And with where rates are right now, a bigger down payment would. He stopped. Started again. We're not asking you to go without, Dad. We know you have savings. We know Mom's life insurance settled out, and we just thought if you're going to leave us something eventually anyway. I sat with that for a moment. If you're going to leave us something eventually anyway, Ellen used to say that I gave people too much benefit of the doubt. That I assumed the best reading of what people meant, even when the worst reading was sitting right there, plain as anything. I heard my son say, we love each other and we need help and we trust you. What Adrian had actually said just before he jumped in was, we thought if you're going to leave us something eventually anyway, eventually, as in, it's already ours. We're just asking for it early. I told them I'd think about it. I thought about it for 3 days. I walked around the block twice each morning, and I sat in Ellen's chair in the evenings, something I almost never do, because the cushion still smells faintly like her perfume, and that's almost too much. And I thought about what it means to help your children versus what it means to help them hurt themselves. I thought about that 9-year-old walking across the street to knock on a neighbor's door. I called my financial advisor, a woman I've worked with since the mid-90s who is constitutionally incapable of telling you what you want to hear. She told me $100,000 was roughly 18% of my liquid assets, and that at my age 67, depleting savings in a meaningful way before seeing what Medicare would actually cover in 15 years was something I should think very carefully about. I told her I was thinking about 50,000, not 100. She said 50,000 was more defensible, but she wanted me to be clear with myself about what I was expecting in return. Not financially. Emotionally. "You're not just writing a check," she said. "You're setting a precedent." I understood what she meant. I think I understood it too late. I called my son and told him yes. 50,000 as a gift, no strings, no expectation of repayment. I told him I was doing it because I loved him, and because his mother would have wanted him to have a real home, and because I didn't think Ellen's money should just sit in a brokerage account until I died. He got quiet on the phone. The good kind of quiet. The kind that sounds like someone is trying not to cry. "Thanks, Dad," he said. "I mean it. Thank you." I went to the bank the following week and arranged a wire transfer, $50,000. Gone in about 4 minutes. I visited them in Cary 2 months later, after they'd closed and moved in. It was a nice house. Good bones. Big maple in the front yard, a kitchen Ellen would have loved. My son gave me the tour with the particular pride of a man who has something real to show for his life, and I was genuinely happy for him. I took pictures to keep on my phone. I ate takeout Thai food with them on the floor because the dining table hadn't arrived yet, and we laughed about it. Adrian was warm that evening, generous with compliments, attentive, asking about my health, my friends at church, my neighbor's new dog. It felt good. I drove the 2 hours home thinking that maybe I'd worried for nothing. Maybe the benefit of the doubt was exactly right. I should have listened to Ellen. It was November when I found out, and I want to be precise about how I found out because I think it matters to the story, to understanding the particular quality of the betrayal. My son-in-law, Adrian's younger brother Marcus, called me. He's a decent man, Marcus. Straightforward, a little awkward in the way of people who are too honest for small talk. We chatted a handful of times at family events, talked about college football mostly. He called because he thought I already knew. "I just wanted to say," he started, "that I think it was really incredible what you did. Coming to the housewarming, bringing that." "Housewarming," I said. A long pause. "The party last month. The housewarming party." "Marcus," I said slowly, "I wasn't at a housewarming party." Another pause. Longer this time. The kind where you can hear someone recalibrating. "Oh," he said. "I must be confused. I'm sorry, forget I said anything. How are you doing, are you, Marcus?" My voice came out very quiet. "What party?" he told me. "Saturday, October 14th. About 30 people. Catered. A bartender. The backyard strung with Edison lights. The kind Ellen and I had seen at a bed and breakfast in Asheville once. And she'd said she wanted for our back porch someday, and we never got around to it." Adrian's family. Her college friends. Her colleagues from the pharmaceutical company where she worked. Their neighbors on the new street. My son had been there. Of course he had. It was his house. I had not been invited. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after I hung up with Marcus. The coffee in front of me went cold. The birds were at the feeder. There are always birds at the feeder, and I watched them without really seeing them. I thought about the tour. The Thai food on the floor. My son's voice on the phone when I said yes. "Thanks, Dad. I mean it." I thought about what 30 people eating catered food and drinking from a bartender costs. It's not nothing. Even modest. You're looking at $3,000–4,000 easily. Money they'd told me they didn't have. Money that needed help with because the market was brutal, because rates were high, because every dollar counted right now. I thought about my name not on the guest list. I am not a man who cries easily. I learned to hold it in during the years I was raising my son alone because I didn't want him to see me come apart. But I sat at that kitchen table that afternoon and I put my head in my hands. I didn't call right away. I'm proud of that. actually, that I waited a week, that I didn't call in the first hour when I was shaking and everything I would have said would have come out wrong. I drove up to Cary on a Saturday morning in November unannounced. I know that wasn't kind, but I also knew that if I called ahead, I would get a version of this conversation that had been prepared, polished, handed to me already framed. I wanted the real one. My son answered the door in a sweatshirt and jeans, a mug of coffee in his hand. His face when he saw me, just for a half second before he composed himself, told me everything. Dad. Hey. I didn't know you were. Can I come in? He stepped back. I came in. Adrienne was in the kitchen. She said good morning and asked if I wanted coffee, and I said no thank you, and I sat down at the dining table that had since arrived. Nice table, solid wood, something that cost money, and my son sat across from me. I asked him about the housewarming party. He didn't deny it. I'll give him that. Some part of him, that 9-year-old, maybe, still in there somewhere, didn't let him deny it. We didn't want to make a big deal, he started. I wasn't invited to my son's housewarming party, I said, to the house I helped him buy. Adrienne's family was there, her friends. It was more of a, were you there? Dad, yes or no? Were you at the party? Yes, then it was your party too. He looked at the table. Adrienne had gone very still in the kitchen doorway. We thought, she said finally, carefully, that it might be awkward. With the age difference between our friend groups, we didn't want you to feel. You didn't want me to feel what? I asked. Grateful that my son had a home? You didn't want me to feel like a father? She didn't answer. My son still wouldn't look at me. I told him what his mother would have thought. I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it because it was true, and because it was the clearest thing I knew. Ellen had very little patience for social performances that came at someone else's expense. She would have been devastated. I told him I wasn't asking for the money back. I wasn't going to be that person. I told him I was asking him to understand what he had done, not to me financially, but to me as his father. That I had gone to the bank and moved $50,000 out of my retirement savings because I believed he was asking me for help, and that what he was actually doing, or allowing to happen, was much more complicated than that. I drove home. Things were quiet for about 6 weeks. Holiday cards, a brief phone call at Thanksgiving when he was at Adrienne's parents' house in Charlotte and called to say hi from the driveway. Polite. Careful. The way you talk to someone when you know you've wronged them and you're hoping time will do some of the work for you. Then, in January, Adrienne called. Not my son. Adrienne. She was very pleasant on the phone. Asked how I was doing, mentioned that the winter had been brutal, said they'd been meaning to have me up for dinner. And then, in the same conversational tone, she mentioned that they'd gotten a quote on having the backyard landscaped grading issue, drainage problem from all the rain, and that it was coming in around $12,000, which was a bit more than they'd expected, and she was wondering if I might be in a position to help. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear and I thought about Marcus's voice. I just wanted to say I think it was really incredible what you did. I thought about Edison lights strung across my son's backyard, the backyard I had not been invited to stand in. I thought about my financial advisor. You're not just writing a check, you're setting a precedent. And I thought about what my son had said to me at that kitchen table, 9 months before all of this. If you're going to leave us something eventually anyway. I let Adrienne finish what she was saying. Then I said, I appreciate you calling, I really do. But I've been doing some thinking about my finances since this fall, and I've decided I need to be a lot more careful about how I use what's left of my savings. I'm sure you understand. At my age, you never know what's coming. A pause. Of course, she said. Of course we completely understand. We weren't trying to. I also want you both to know, I said, that I've been meeting with my estate attorney. Just routine things. Updating documents, clarifying some language, making sure everything reflects my current wishes. Another pause. Longer. That sounds very responsible, she said. Her voice had changed texture. I think so, I said. And I wanted you to hear it from me directly rather than wonder. Things are a little different now than they were a year ago. I've been doing a lot of thinking about who I want to take care of, and how, and why. I kept my voice kind throughout. I wasn't angry. I had moved through the anger months ago, somewhere on the drive back from Cary on that November Saturday, somewhere around the point where the highway opened up and I could see the sky and I turned the radio off and just drove. What I was now was clear. Give my son my love, I said. Tell him the door's always open. For him. I let that settle for exactly 1 second. You have a good evening, Adrian. My son called 3 days later. We had the real conversation then. The one that had been waiting since November, maybe since longer than that. He cried. I did too, a little, though I didn't tell him. He said he was sorry, genuinely sorry, and I believe him because I still believe in that 9-year-old kid who walked across the street to knock on a neighbor's door. We are still figuring it out. These things take time. I won't pretend we've arrived somewhere clean and resolved because that's not how it works in real families. Real families have these wounds that scar over but don't fully disappear. What I know is this. I raised my son to take responsibility for what he breaks. He's remembered that. Maybe a little late. But he remembered. And the estate documents, by the way, are updated. They reflect my current wishes, exactly as I said. Ellen would have said, finally. I set my coffee down, looked out at the bird feeder, and for the first time in a long time just let the morning be quiet. The bird feeder is still there. Ellen picked it out at a hardware store in 2013, a plain wooden one, nothing fancy, and I've refilled it every few weeks ever since without really thinking about why. I think about why now. I think about what it means to keep tending something even after the person who started it with you is gone. That's a kind of integrity, maybe the quiet, unglamorous kind that nobody sees, the kind that doesn't announce itself. What happened with my son and Adrian taught me something I wish I'd understood earlier, something I tried to teach him without fully living it myself. There's a difference between generosity and surrender. When I wired that $50,000, I told myself it was generosity, and part of it was, but part of it, the part that didn't ask the hard questions, the part that heard, if you're going to leave it to us eventually anyway and let it pass without comment, that part was something closer to avoidance. I didn't want the conflict. I didn't want to be the father who said no, who made his son feel judged, who complicated a moment that looked on the surface like it should be simple and warm and good. So I made it easy. And making it easy was, in the end, not kind. Not to him. And not to me. I've been thinking about what it actually takes to do right by the people you love. It's not softness. It's not just showing up and writing checks and saying yes because yes feels like love in the moment. Real moral clarity. The kind that holds even when it costs you something, that requires you to see the situation as it actually is, not as you wish it were. I saw the warning signs with Adrian. I heard the entitlement underneath the ask. And I chose not to see it because seeing it would have required me to act differently, and acting differently would have been harder. That's the thing about wisdom. It's not the same as intelligence. I was smart enough to call my financial advisor, smart enough to know the numbers, but wisdom would have asked, what am I actually agreeing to here? What does this teach my son about what I'm worth to him? Those questions take a different kind of courage to sit with. And courage, real, daily courage, not the dramatic kind, is just doing the harder thing when the easier thing is right there. It's calling your son back 3 days later instead of 3 months later. It's updating your estate documents not out of bitterness, but out of honesty. It's saying the door is open for you and meaning it, while also meaning the rest of what you left unsaid. My son and I are still working through it. I don't know exactly where we land, but I know that the conversation we had in November, the real one, was more honest than most of the conversations we'd had in the previous decade. That came from somewhere. It came from me refusing, finally, to make things easy. Ellen used to say that the people who love you will rise to meet you if you give them the chance. What she meant, I think, was that you have to hold the standard. You have to believe they're capable of better before they'll believe it themselves. I'm still holding it, and I'm still refilling the bird feeder.